My name is Margaret Allen. My daughter hasn't smiled, not truly smiled, since the day she reunited with the man who gave her half her DNA and all of her confusion. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. I still remember it. The last time Ellie laughed like a child. It was a summer afternoon, one of those rare, perfect days in late July where the air feels soft and the cicadas hum just loud enough to remind you that time is moving. She had just finished baking her own version of lemon bars, and the kitchen was a mess of powdered sugar-spilled zest and flour footprints across the floor. I had said something silly, probably mocked my own baking skills, and she laughed so hard that she nearly dropped the tray. That was her at 15, expressive, quick, to laugh, a little dramatic, but so full of light it made the air around her warmer. That was also the last summer before she met him, before the light went out. They say trauma leaves marks not on skin, but in habits, in silences, in the shape of a slouch, or the sudden tightening of shoulders. I watched that brightness fade day by day until all I could see in her was the echo of who she'd been. The change started with a single envelope. It arrived in early August, 2 days after her 16th birthday. It looked innocuous, just a cream envelope with her name written in blocky handwriting. No return address. Ellie found it in the mailbox and opened it without hesitation. I was in the kitchen. I remember wiping the counter, humming to myself. When I turned to look at her, her face was still. Not shocked. Not happy. Just still. She didn't say a word about what was inside. She folded the letter carefully and walked upstairs. The silence was thick enough to taste. Later that night, when I passed by her room, I saw her lying on her bed holding the letter in her hand. Her eyes were open. No music played from her speakers. The air was too quiet. I didn't say anything. Maybe I should have. But I didn't want to pry. I thought I was giving her space. I wish I had torn that letter apart before she ever saw it. Because it came from him. Michael Lane, my ex-husband, Ellie's biological father. A man I hadn't seen or heard from in over a decade. He vanished when Ellie was just 3. Left me holding a toddler in one arm and foreclosure notices in the other. I hadn't spoken his name in years. Not out of anger, at least not entirely, but out of sheer survival. I had buried him in my memory because I had to. Because I couldn't keep parenting and grieving at the same time. I told Ellie fragments over the years. That her father wasn't part of our lives because he couldn't be. That sometimes love isn't enough. That some people leave not because they're gone, but because they were never built to stay. She accepted that. Or pretended to. But the letter, his letter, cracked something open in her. I could see it by the way she started sitting differently, quieter, contemplative. She began asking more questions. Did Dad ever play guitar? Did I get my nose from him? Was he funny? I answered what I could. And I lied about what I had to. What else was I supposed to do? When she told me she wanted to meet him, I was sitting at the kitchen table grading student essays. She said it calmly. No drama. Just, I want to see him. Like it was a dentist appointment. A casual errand. My stomach clenched. I wanted to scream, to say, no, don't you dare. But all I said was, why now? Her answer, because I want to know why he didn't stay. That hit me harder than any insult ever could. I offered to go with her. She refused. He just wants to see me, not both of us, she said. The words stung more than she realized. I drove her to the meeting spot, a little diner off Route 4. The place looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s, with cracked red booths and a flickering open 24 hours sign that buzzed slightly too loud. She walked in alone. I stayed in the car, my hands clenched on the steering wheel, counting every second. When she came back out an hour later, something about her was off. Not upset, not thrilled, just blank. I asked how it went. She shrugged. It was fine. Then silence. I drove us home. And from that moment on, she never really smiled again. Not genuinely, not the way she used to. At first, I thought maybe she was overwhelmed. That meeting the man she had dreamed up her entire life was a shock. Maybe she was processing. But days turned into weeks, and the Ellie I knew began disappearing. She stopped baking, stopped humming, stopped touching the piano keys she used to love. She didn't yell or cry, she just faded. And every time I tried to reach her, she pulled further away, like she was caught in some invisible tide, pulling her toward him. That's when I started to wonder, what did he say to her in that diner? What lies did he plant in her head in the span of 60 minutes? Because something broke in her that day, and the fracture was deeper than anything I could see. But I was her mother. I wasn't going to let her slip away without a fight. Not again, not this time. The letter came in an ordinary envelope. No fancy script, no return address, no warning. Just Ellie's name, her full name written in sharp, unfamiliar capital letters, Elena Grace Allen. It arrived 2 days after her 16th birthday. She had just returned from her part-time job at the library and found it sitting alone on the kitchen counter. I hadn't noticed it when I brought in the rest of the mail. Maybe I overlooked it. Maybe I didn't want to see it. Ellie picked it up, and immediately her entire mood shifted. There was something in the way she held it reverently, like it was holy. Her fingers trembled slightly. She didn't rip it open like she did birthday cards. No, she took it to her room, closed the door, and didn't come out for hours. I stood outside her room once or twice, my hand hovering just above the knob, but I didn't knock. I told myself I was giving her privacy. But the truth, I was scared. Scared of whatever was behind that letter. Scared of the ghost I thought we buried years ago. That night at dinner, Ellie was oddly quiet. She didn't fidget with her fork like usual. She didn't interrupt with side comments or scroll through her phone. She just sat there, too still, her spaghetti untouched eyes distant. I asked how her shift went. She said, fine. I asked if she needed help with homework. She said, no. And then she looked me dead in the eye and asked, why did Dad leave? It was the first time in years she used the word dad. My breath caught in my throat. I steadied my voice. We've talked about this before. No, we haven't. Not really. Her eyes didn't waver. You always said it was complicated. That some people can't stay. That he wasn't capable of being a father. But what does that even mean? The room felt smaller, tighter. It means I said carefully he made choices that hurt both of us, that he walked away when we needed him most. Ellie stared at her plate for a long moment. Then she pushed it aside and said, he wants to meet me. I blinked. What? The letter. He wrote me. He says he's sober now. Says he regrets leaving. Says he thinks about me every day. I felt a buzzing in my ears, like static. He had found her. After all this time. Not through me. Not through a lawyer. Not through any formal channel. He'd written directly to her. Like I didn't even exist. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. Why not, she challenged. Because you don't know him, Ellie. Exactly. That's why I want to meet him. I tried to stay composed. Tried not to raise my voice. You only know the version he wants you to believe. He walked out on us. He never looked back. She didn't flinch. Well, maybe he's changed. That phrase, I'd heard it before. From friends. From students. From women in my support group. Maybe he's changed. That's the phrase we use when we want to rewrite the past. When we hope the villain's mask was just a misunderstanding. When we want to believe that time can heal what choices broke. He had every chance to reach out, I said. He chose silence. Ellie folded her arms. Maybe you told him not to come back. My mouth dropped open. She didn't say it with venom. She said it like she truly wondered if that could be true. My throat tightened. Ellie, do you think I lied to you? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I don't know what to think anymore. That night, I cried in the laundry room. I didn't want her to hear. But I cried because I realized something terrifying. She wanted to believe him, more than she wanted to believe me. And how could I blame her? He was a blank page, a mystery, a fantasy. I was the one who set curfews, gave lectures, enforced rules. I was the one she argued with about chores, who made her go to bed early, who took her phone when she skipped school. I was real, and sometimes real people get replaced by ideas. Over the next week, I tried to talk her out of it, gently at first, then more firmly. She didn't budge. So finally, I gave her what felt like the only choice I had. I offered to drive her. If you're going to do this, I said, I want to be nearby, in case something goes wrong, in case you need me. She rolled her eyes. It's not like he's dangerous? I almost laughed at that. No, Michael Lane wasn't dangerous like a criminal. He was dangerous like fire in a dry forest. Quiet. Charming. Unstoppable once ignited. They agreed to meet at a 24-hour diner just outside of town. Neutral ground, she said. He paid for her pancakes and talked for over an hour. I waited outside, parked across the street, staring at the glowing neon sign through a fogged-up windshield. I tried to imagine what he was saying to her. Was he apologizing? Telling her stories? Spinning half-truths into fairy tales? When she returned to the car, she didn't say a word. She didn't look angry. Didn't look excited either. She just looked changed. The light in her eyes, the one I'd nurtured for 16 years, had dimmed. She whispered, "Can we just go home?" I nodded. I didn't press her for details. Not that night. Not the next day, either. Because deep down I already knew. That letter was the start of something I couldn't control. And the girl who had once laughed over lemon bars was slipping through my fingers, one unread page at a time. I don't know what I expected when Ellie met her father. Maybe a burst of tears, an emotional breakdown, a dramatic embrace. Maybe she'd come back furious, disillusioned, ready to admit he was nothing more than a ghost in borrowed skin. Or maybe she'd come back laughing, healed, somehow better. But she didn't come back as any of those things. She came back quiet, too quiet. When she opened the car door after their diner visit, she didn't even glance at me. She just slid into the seat and buckled her belt like she had just left a dentist appointment. Not a life-altering reunion. I stared at her for a long second, waiting for her to say something. Anything. "How was it?" I finally asked. She shrugged. Fine. Fine. The word hit me like ice water. It was so casual, so indifferent. But I saw her knuckles, how they were slightly pale from how tightly her fists were clenched in her lap. "He seemed nice," she added. I wanted to scream. Nice. This was the man who left us with nothing, who walked out in the middle of the night when she was still in diapers, who didn't even leave a note, who changed his number, his address, and vanished so completely, I thought maybe he'd died. "Did he say why he left?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just for a second. He said, 'You pushed him away, that he wanted to be part of my life, but you made it impossible.'" And there it was. The poison. He had started already. I took a breath. "That's not true." She looked out the window. "I'm just telling you what he said." But she wasn't just telling me. She was believing it. The next few days felt like walking on cracking ice. Ellie moved through the house like a shadow. She wasn't angry. She wasn't joyful. She was hollow. A girl-shaped outline with all the color sucked out. I'd find her staring off into space, her homework untouched. She stopped playing piano, stopped watching her favorite shows, didn't ask to borrow the car or meet up with friends. She just existed, in silence. And when she did speak, her voice had changed, not in tone, but in texture. Like she was testing every word before saying it, like she no longer trusted her own instincts or mine. I tried to give her space, but space turned into distance. Distance turned into a void. One night, I passed by her room and paused at the door. The light was off, but I heard her whispering. A phone call. Her voice low and strained. "Yeah, I don't know. She acts like he never mattered. Maybe she didn't tell me everything." A pause. "No, she won't talk about him. It's like he never existed." I backed away from the door before I heard the rest. I felt nauseous. He was worming his way into her, not just into her memories, but into her present, twisting our past, rewriting our story, turning me into the villain without ever stepping foot in my house. The next morning, she sat at the table and pushed cereal around in her bowl without eating. You know, she said casually, he offered to take me to a concert next weekend. I dropped the spoon in my coffee mug. Excuse me. He said he got tickets to some band he thought I'd like. My voice was calm, too calm. You're 16. You barely know this man. He's my father, she snapped. So, am I nothing? I asked, the words sharper than I meant them to be. She blinked. I didn't say that. You might as well have. She stood up. Why can't you just let me have this for once? Because I know him, I whispered, and you don't. That was the end of that conversation. She left the table. She didn't come home until late. The concert didn't happen. He had to cancel last minute, she told me days later, trying to sound unaffected. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the first crack in the fairy tale. Still, she didn't smile. She just drifted deeper into her own head. Sometimes she'd watch the rain for hours without speaking. Sometimes I'd find her scrolling through old photos, baby pictures I hadn't seen in years. She was looking for him, I realized. Proof of him. Evidence that he had been here, that he wasn't just a ghost her mother invented to cover up something worse. That thought terrified me. I started to question myself. Did I tell her too little? Had I hidden too much? I had always believed protecting her meant sheltering her from the ugliest truths. But now, maybe all I did was leave space for someone else to fill the silence with lies. She began to dress differently. Less color, less pattern, more black. Her journal, once left in plain sight, was now hidden, locked, tucked beneath her mattress. And her laughter, the one that once lit up the room, had been replaced with short exhales through her nose, half smiles at best. I kept waiting for her to come to me, to say you were right. But she didn't. Because she wasn't ready. Because she still believed he might be the answer to something. I too used to believe he was the answer, and that was my mistake. Now I was watching history try to repeat itself in my daughter's hands, except this time, I wasn't the one being abandoned. I was the one being erased. A few weeks after that diner meeting, Ellie stopped knocking. She used to knock before entering my room, before borrowing my charger, before opening the fridge late at night to snack on leftover lasagna. She used to ask. She used to care. But slowly, subtly, she began to move through the house like it wasn't mine anymore. Like it was just a building we happened to both sleep in. She'd come and go, her footsteps quiet, her eyes fixed on the middle distance. And when we did speak, our words barely touched. I started referring to her in my own mind as the stranger upstairs. It was like she was possessed not by something evil, but by something unfamiliar. Some new version of herself that didn't belong to me anymore. One evening, I came home from work early. The house was quiet except for the faint thumping of music behind her closed door. I stood outside it for a moment, hesitant. Then I knocked twice. No answer. I knocked again. Ellie. The music stopped. Silence. Then what? I brought Chinese. You hungry? A pause. No. That was it. No thanks. No, maybe later. Just no. I stood there a second longer, then walked away. I didn't cry. I just felt displaced. Like someone had rearranged all the furniture in my life, and I kept bumping into corners that weren't supposed to be there. Later that night, I noticed the living room light was still on. I walked in and found her curled up on the couch, scrolling through photos on her phone. Not pictures of friends or school dances. Photos of him. They'd taken selfies. At a park. At a bookstore. One in front of an old vinyl record shop, the kind of place I knew she never cared for before. I watched her thumb linger on one where he was grinning, his arm slung around her shoulder like he'd been there all along. You're up late, I said softly. She jumped. Jesus, Mom, don't sneak up on me. I didn't sneak. I walked. She rolled her eyes and locked the phone screen. What do you want? I sat down across from her. I want to understand what's happening. Nothing's happening. Ellie. I'm just getting to know my father. Isn't that supposed to be a good thing? Not if it comes at the cost of everything else. She looked away. You mean you? No, I said carefully. I mean you. She looked confused. You're not you lately. You barely eat. You barely sleep. You don't smile. You walk around this house like you hate being here. She shrugged. Maybe I do. The words cut cleanly, no malice, just honesty. I could have argued. I could have yelled. But instead I asked, what did he tell you? She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? About me, about the past. She hesitated, then leaned forward, almost like she wanted to test the water. He said, you shut him out. That after the divorce you didn't let him see me. That he tried, but you made it impossible. I felt something inside me go still. That's not the truth, I said evenly. Then why didn't you ever tell me your version? Because I was trying to protect you. From what? I took a breath. From knowing he left us because he didn't want the responsibility. From knowing that I had to file a restraining order after he emptied our savings and came home drunk 3 nights in a row. From knowing that he didn't just walk away, he made me beg for him to leave. She blinked but didn't speak. I was 27. You were 3. And I had nothing. No job, no money, no plan. Just you. And somehow I still believed it was better if you grew up without him than with the version of him I knew. The room felt too quiet. But people change, she whispered. Sometimes I said, and sometimes they pretend they have. She didn't say anything, just stood and walked out of the room. The next day I noticed her door was locked. It had never been locked before. Something about that small detail made my hands shake. I went into the kitchen and sat at the table staring at the spot where we used to eat dinner together every Sunday. She used to sit cross-legged in the chair, tell me about school gossip, teachers she hated, movies she wanted to see. Now that chair stayed empty. That night, I dreamed about her as a little girl again, chasing butterflies in the backyard, wearing one of those frilly dresses she used to demand every morning, her laugh echoing through the garden. When I woke up, the silence of the house hit me like a wave. It wasn't just that she had changed. It was that I no longer knew who I was in her life. The mother, the enemy, the forgotten. I told myself this would pass, that teenage girls go through phases, that maybe all this distance would eventually close back in like a wound scabbing over. But that wasn't what was happening. She wasn't changing because she was growing. She was changing for him. And I realized with a cold shudder that the man who once left us without a word was now rewriting his legacy in the heart of the one person I loved most. In my own home, I wasn't looking for anything that day. Not really. I was just cleaning. It was a Saturday morning, and Ellie had gone out, said she was meeting friends, though I suspected she meant him. She'd stopped offering details, and I'd stopped asking. I wandered into her room with a laundry basket tucked under one arm, still warm from the dryer. It was the first time I'd been in there in weeks without her glaring presence. The air smelled different, older somehow, like stale perfume and something more distant. Like change. Her bed was unmade blankets crumpled into a shape too chaotic to ignore. I straightened the sheets like I used to when she was 12, tucking the corners tight. Some rituals you hold on to just to remind yourself that once everything felt simpler. That's when I noticed the loose floorboard, near the far corner just beneath her nightstand. It wasn't obvious, just slightly misaligned, the edge poking up by no more than a sliver. But I noticed it. I always notice the things others don't. It's part of what made me a good counselor. I knelt down and gently pried it up. Beneath it, a stack of folded papers, tightly packed, worn, creased at the corners. My heart dropped. This wasn't teenage rebellion. This wasn't secret song lyrics or love notes to a crush. This was something else. I pulled the papers out carefully. They weren't just letters, they were a timeline. At least a dozen pages handwritten and dated. Some on plain notebook paper, others on stationery with the same tight, blocky handwriting I'd seen on the original envelope. Michael. He hadn't just written her once. He had been writing her for months. Maybe longer. Each letter detailed pieces of his life, his recovery, his regrets, his memories of better times. He wrote about missing her first steps, how he always imagined them. about regretting every Christmas he missed, claiming he kept a gift every year, just in case. He painted himself as a tragic broken man, a father who had wanted to be there but was shut out. And each letter twisted the narrative just enough to cast doubt on me. I tried to visit once he wrote in one, but your mom said it would confuse you. I wanted to call, but she changed the number. She never forgave me even after I sobered up. Lies, manipulations wrapped in sentiment. My hands trembled. I turned over the last page and found a photo. It was old. Us, me, him, and baby Ellie. She was maybe 2, still chubby-cheeked and wide-eyed, perched on his lap, while I sat beside them smiling like I believed the world was still intact. I stared at it for a long time. Then I slipped it back into the envelope and stood up. I knew I shouldn't have read them. They weren't mine. But I had to know what he was feeding her. And now I did. He'd been grooming her perception, chipping away at her faith in me, one romanticized sentence at a time. When she came home that evening, she walked into the kitchen where I sat at the table with the envelope in front of me. Her eyes locked onto it instantly. You went through my stuff. My voice was calm, flat. When were you going to tell me he'd been writing you for months? She didn't answer. Her lips parted, then closed again. You let me believe it was just one letter. I knew you'd freak out, she muttered. Ellie, this isn't about me freaking out. This is about trust. About the fact that he's been manipulating you behind my back while you've shut me out. You don't know what you're talking about. I read them. She gasped, more hurt than angry. You read them? I had to. No, you chose to. He's poisoning you, Ellie. No, she snapped. He's telling me what you never did. I stood, pushing the chair back slowly. Everything I didn't say was to protect you. Her voice cracked. From what, the truth? No, from him. There was silence. Then she grabbed the envelope, her hands shaking. You had no right. And with that, she walked out. Not upstairs, not to her room. She left the house. And I let her. Because in that moment, I realized something that hollowed me out entirely. I had spent 16 years building a safe world for her. And in a matter of weeks, one man with a pen and a few carefully chosen words was burning it down. I couldn't sleep that night. Even with the lights off and the windows closed, my mind replayed every word, every scribbled phrase from those letters like they were burned into the inside of my eyelids. I didn't hear Ellie come back in. At 3:12 a.m., I checked her room. She was there, barely visible under the blanket, curled up tight like a comma. A girl in a sentence that no longer made sense. And me, I sat on the hallway floor for hours staring at her closed door, wondering when she had stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as an obstacle. By morning, I knew what I had to do. If Michael wanted to rewrite history, I was going to confront the author. I hadn't seen him in over 13 years, not since the court papers, not since the restraining order. But I still had one phone number that hadn't changed, his sister's. She was a quiet woman kept to herself, and for years we had no contact. But when I texted her and asked her to pass along a message, she agreed. Maybe she didn't approve of what he was doing either. Or maybe she just didn't want to be in the middle anymore. I kept the message simple. We need to talk. No games. One time. Neutral place. He replied within 2 hours. Diner, Wednesday, 5 p.m. The same diner where he first met Ellie. When I walked in, he was already there, same booth, same cocky posture, like nothing had changed. Like we were just two old friends catching up over coffee. His face was older, shore lines, deeper beard, scruffy and uneven. But his eyes were the same. Charming, calculating, and worse still, dangerous in that quiet, persuasive way that made you second-guess your instincts. He stood when he saw me. Maggie. I didn't smile. Michael. We sat. He ordered a coffee. I didn't. There was silence for a moment. Then he leaned back, arms folded. You've aged well. I didn't come here for compliments. He smirked. You never did like small talk. I leaned forward. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Writing to her. Filling her head with half-truths. Making me the villain. He laughed, not loudly, but with that familiar condescension that made my skin crawl. I'm just giving her what you never did. And what's that? I asked. A liar who calls himself a father. His eyes darkened. You don't get to sit on a moral high horse, Maggie. You shut me out. You made it impossible to see her. You left Michael. You walked out. You emptied our bank account and left a 3-year-old asking why Daddy didn't say goodbye. He didn't flinch. I was sick. You were selfish. He sipped his coffee, then looked out the window. You don't know what those years were like for me. No, I don't. Because you never called. Never showed up. Never paid child support. And now you think a few letters can fix that? He turned back to me, leaning forward, suddenly serious. I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just trying to know her. That's not a crime. It is when you manipulate her to do it. He raised a brow. Is that what she told you? That I'm manipulating her. She's a teenager, Michael. You're dangling a fantasy in front of her. A rewritten version of you that doesn't exist. I'm sober now, he said. 3 years. I've changed. I stared at him. But you're still the same underneath. You still bend truth like it's origami. You tell people what they want to hear. I told her what she deserved to hear, he said coldly. That I wanted to be there. That I tried. You didn't try, I snapped. You disappeared. You let me drown. I worked 2 jobs, slept 3 hours a night, missed every doctor's appointment because I couldn't afford them. And you were probably drunk in someone else's bed writing songs about regret. His jaw clenched. I didn't come here to fight, I added. I came here to tell you one thing: stay away from her. Stop writing. Stop feeding her poison. Let her grow up with clarity, not confusion. He leaned in closer. You're scared, aren't you? I froze. You're scared she'll choose me. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A knife wrapped in silk. I said nothing. I get it, he continued. You had her all to yourself for 16 years. You got to play hero and victim. Now she's finally seeing another side, and you're losing control. You think this is about control, I hissed. This is about protecting her from you. She's not a child anymore. No, I said quietly. She's not. But she's still my daughter. He leaned back, smiling faintly. She'll come to her own conclusions, Maggie. That's what you're afraid of. I'm afraid, I said, standing up, that she'll fall for the same version of you I once did. The polished lie. I walked away before he could respond. Outside, the sky was already darkening. Streetlights buzzed to life, casting long shadows across the pavement. I stood there for a long moment, watching my breath rise in the cold air. I knew I couldn't stop him. But maybe, just maybe, I could show Ellie the truth in a way he never could. After the confrontation at the diner, I thought I'd feel a sense of resolution, closure, strength. But instead, I came home and sat on the couch with the TV off, staring at nothing. I couldn't even bring myself to take off my shoes. He was smug, confident, because he knew something I didn't. Ellie was listening to him. Not just hearing, but listening. Letting his words sink in, stain her memories like wine on white linen. I looked around the living room, trying to remember the last time she and I sat in here together. Watched a movie. Laughed. Ate popcorn too late at night. I couldn't remember. It was as if our relationship had been sliced open, left to bleed quietly, while I pretended everything could still be mended with patience and time. That evening, I knocked on her bedroom door. No answer. So I opened it. She was lying on her bed, earbuds and scrolling her phone. Her face blank. I need to talk to you, I said gently. She didn't look up. About what? About your father. Now she looked at me flatly. I already know what you're going to say. You don't. I do. You think he's lying. You think he's dangerous. You think I'm too stupid to figure it out myself. My heart ached. Ellie, no. I'm seeing a therapist, she blurted. I blinked. Excuse me? I started seeing a therapist last week. I stepped into the room. Why didn't you tell me? She finally sat up. Because I knew you'd make it about you. I felt like I'd been slapped. I didn't even know you were looking for one. I wasn't, she said. Dad helped me find her. My blood turned to ice. What? She recommended someone. Paid for the first sessions, too. I didn't tell you because I wanted to talk to someone neutral. I took a shaky breath. Ellie. He found your therapist. Yes. And she's great. She listens to me. She doesn't try to control me. She's not neutral, I said, trying to stay calm. If she came recommended by him, she's already part of his story. No, she's not like that. You don't know that. I do, she snapped, because she listens without judging. She lets me ask questions. She doesn't twist my memories. That last line cut deep. I sat on the edge of her bed slowly. Ellie, I've never tried to twist anything. I've tried to protect you. She was quiet. I could tell part of her wanted to believe me, but she was too far into this now. What has she said about me? I asked. Ellie looked away. We talk about everything. Did you tell her about the letters? Yes. About how long he's been writing to you? Yes. And what did she say? She said, I need to trust my instincts. That maybe what I'm angry about isn't the truth itself, but the fact that I've had to go looking for it. I exhaled. Ellie, do you think I lied to you your whole life? She didn't answer. That silence said everything. I stood. I want you to have someone to talk to. Truly. But you deserve someone unbiased. Not someone handpicked by the man who vanished from your life and returned with a pen full of stories. She's helped me more in 2 weeks than you have in months. I flinched. She didn't apologize. I nodded slowly. All right. Then I walked out. That night, I sat at my desk for hours doing something I hadn't done in a long, long time, digging through old court files, emails, bank statements, my restraining order, medical bills, copies of his rehab records from when he did check in, and check right back out. I printed everything. I wasn't going to hand it to Ellie, not like some desperate proof packet. But I needed it. I needed it to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that what I remembered was real, that his charm wasn't redemption, that words on a page weren't the same as being there. 2 days later, Ellie's mood shifted again. She came down the stairs and said without looking at me, I want to go stay with him. For the weekend. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. No, you can't stop me. I'm 16. You're still my daughter. Then trust me. I shook my head. Not with him. Not until I know who he really is now. She exploded. You never trusted me. That's the whole point. That's not true. It is, she said. And that's why I talk to the therapist. That's why I talk to him. Because they don't look at me like I'm broken. My chest cracked open. She stormed out. And I stood there rooted in place, knowing I was losing her one conversation, one misstep at a time. But what terrified me most wasn't the anger. It was the fact that in her eyes he had become the healer. And I was just the wound. It was past midnight. The house was dark, except for a dim hallway light I always left on just enough to guide sleepy feet to the bathroom, just enough to remind us both that we were not entirely alone. I couldn't sleep. Again. I had made tea. I hadn't drunk it. It sat on the counter cold. I wandered upstairs, slippers soft against the floorboards. I was going to check on Ellie, not to talk, not to hover, just to make sure she was still here. I don't even know what that meant anymore. Her door was cracked. Just slightly. Not like her. That was the only reason I heard it. Her voice quiet, trembling in the low hush people reserve for secrets. A phone call. I froze. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but something in her tone stopped me cold. I don't know what's real anymore, she whispered. A pause. I mean, she swears she's telling the truth, but it doesn't add up. Why would you lie about something like that? Another pause. The voice on the other end was low, too far away for me to make out. But I knew who it was. Maybe she didn't want me to hate her, Ellie said. Then silence. Then barely above a breath, I think I already do. The words hit me like glass shattering inside my chest. I backed away from the door slowly, carefully, until I was in the bathroom down the hall. I sat on the edge of the tub, hand over my mouth, staring at the chipped tile. She hated me. She thought she did, at least. I'd spent 16 years stitching her world together, building walls of safety with my bare hands, filling gaps where he had left emptiness. And somehow all she could see now were the cracks. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad, not yet. I felt something colder, like grief, but inverted, like mourning a version of myself I couldn't return to. When I finally went back to my room, I sat in the dark and thought about when she was 9 years old. When she fell off her bike and came running into the house with a bloody knee. She didn't cry until she saw me. She trusted that I'd fix it, that I'd make it better. That's what love had looked like back then, the sound of my voice soothing her, the comfort of band-aids and whispered reassurances. But now if she bled again, she wouldn't run to me. She'd call him. The next morning, she didn't come downstairs for breakfast. She rarely did anymore. But that morning, it felt different. Like there was no longer a thread connecting us at all. When she did appear around noon, she looked at me as if I were a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. She wore his hoodie. I recognized it from the photos. Some old concert logo across the front. Too big for her, swallowed her whole. She sat on the couch and turned on the TV without a word. I stood in the kitchen staring at her, trying to remember what it felt like to be a mother to a daughter who looked at you like you were her entire world. "Ellie," I said gently, "can we talk?" She didn't pause the show. "About what?" "About last night." Now she turned slowly. "You were listening." "I wasn't trying to." "But you did." I nodded. She crossed her arms. "Then you already know how I feel." "I know how you feel right now. But feelings change." "Not these." I stepped closer. "I understand you're angry. That you're confused. I understand that he's showing you things I never could. But you have to understand something too. I didn't hide the past to hurt you. I did it because I thought it would protect you." "I don't want your protection anymore," she said. "You think you don't, but you're still figuring out who you are." "So are you," she snapped. "You're still trying to be the person who never made a mistake." That landed harder than she knew. I sat across from her. "I made plenty of mistakes, but loving you wasn't one of them. Raising you alone wasn't one of them. Fighting to keep you safe, that was never a mistake." She looked away. "Do you remember?" I said softly, "when you were 5 and used to sleep with all your stuffed animals in a circle around your bed so they wouldn't get lonely?" She blinked. "No, I do. Because I watched you every night rearranging them, making space for each one. You didn't want anyone to feel left out. So maybe that's who you still are? You're trying to make space for him. And that's okay. But you don't have to throw everything else out to do that." She was quiet. I could see the war in her. Anger, guilt, hope, pain, all wrapped in the fog of teenage confusion and adult betrayals. She finally said, "He said you always made him feel small, that he was never good enough for you." I felt something twist in my gut. "That may be true," I said, "but not because he was small, because he chose to stay small. He had chances to be better, to be there, and he didn't take them." Another silence. Then she asked something I didn't expect. "Do you think I'm like him?" The question hit me harder than anything else had. I walked over and knelt beside her. "No," I said, voice trembling. "You are nothing like him." She looked at me, tears brimming now. "You are kind. You are stubborn. You are messy and brilliant and so full of heart it scares me. And even when you're angry at me, even when you think you hate me, I know you still love me." One tear slid down her cheek. I reached out, but she didn't lean in. Not yet. But she didn't pull away either. That was something. There's a particular kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from betrayal or lies. It comes from watching someone fall in love with an idea. That's what I saw happening to Ellie. She wasn't falling for Michael, the man who abandoned us, the one who missed every school recital, every doctor's appointment, every scraped knee and birthday candle. She was falling for the idea of Michael. The polished memory. The charming voice over the phone. The father-shaped fantasy that filled in all the gaps with soft lighting and easy explanations. And I couldn't compete with that. Because I was real, messy, flawed, present. I was the one who nagged her about grades, who took her phone when she lied, who stood in the cold rain waiting outside school concerts, cheering in the back like a fool. I was the one who raised her. And suddenly that wasn't enough. One afternoon, I walked into the living room to find her flipping through an old photo album I hadn't seen in years. It had been buried in the hall closet under a stack of tax returns and Christmas decorations. She must have gone looking for it. She was curled up on the couch, flipping slowly, fingers brushing the pages. "That one," she said as I walked in, "he's holding me." I looked. It was a picture from Ellie's second birthday. Michael had one arm around her and the other holding a sparkler. She was in a polka-dotted dress. I was just off-frame handing out juice boxes. "I don't remember this," she said. "You were too." She turned another page. "You look happy." I was trying to be. Her eyes didn't leave the page. "You never told me we had these." Because I stopped looking at them. They made everything harder. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to remember who he could have been." She looked at me then. "Do you ever miss him?" I didn't lie. "Sometimes I miss the version of him I thought I married." She nodded like she understood. "I think I'm doing that." "Doing what?" "Falling for the version of him I made up. The one who writes perfect letters. The one who says all the right things. But not the one who left." I sat down beside her. "That's normal," I said softly. "We do that when people disappear. We build them back up in our minds. Better. Simpler. Cleaner." She looked down. "I want to believe him so badly." "I know. I want to believe he didn't mean to leave. That he was scared. Or sick. Or something forgivable." My voice cracked. "And sometimes he was. But mostly, he was just selfish." She was quiet. Then she whispered, "I used to think if I ever found him, I'd feel whole." "And do you—" She shook her head. "I feel more broken now than before." My heart ached. "I thought I'd found the missing piece," she said. "But all I found was someone who wants to be the missing piece without any of the history." I reached out, placed my hand gently over hers. "You don't need to choose between us, Ellie." She looked up. "I feel like I already have." "No," I said. "You're still figuring things out. That doesn't make you disloyal. That makes you human." She hesitated, then said, "He told me you used to sing to me at night." I smiled faintly. "Every night. Even when I was exhausted." "Why'd you stop?" "You stopped asking." Her eyes welled up. "I don't remember it." "You were little, but you always fell asleep faster when I did." She swallowed. "I want to remember that." And I could see at the part of her that was still reaching for something solid, something that wasn't shaped by letters or ghost stories or photos in a dusty album. Something real. I stood and said, "Come with me." She followed me upstairs and I pulled down a battered cardboard box from my closet. Inside, old camcorder tapes, the kind that barely work anymore, and a handful of burned DVDs I'd made before everything went digital. I plugged one into the ancient DVD player in my room. On the screen, a grainy video flickered to life. Me younger, thinner eyes ringed with fatigue, but glowing with joy, holding toddler Ellie on my lap, rocking slowly in an armchair as I sang, "You Are My Sunshine," off-key. Ellie gasped. "That's our old living room." "Yeah?" Her voice was barely audible. "I didn't know this existed." I said nothing. The video played. I kept singing, rocking. Little Ellie, head against my chest, eyes fluttering. "And older Ellie?" she cried. Silently, tears sliding down her cheeks like something cracking open for the first time in weeks. When the video ended, she whispered, "Why didn't you ever show me these?" "Because I was afraid," I said. "Afraid they wouldn't be enough." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Because in that moment something changed. Something shifted. She was still confused, still torn. But the fantasy, it was fading, and the memory of me, the real me, was starting to return. Not perfect, but true. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, one of those gray, indecisive days when the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or just hang heavy over everything. I was at work finishing a parent-teacher conference when my phone rang. Unknown number. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut made me answer. "Is this Margaret Allen?" a voice asked. "Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your daughter's been brought in after an incident at school. She's conscious, but we'd like you to come as soon as possible." My heart stopped. I didn't ask what happened. I didn't ask who called 911. I just ran. By the time I reached the hospital, I was breathless, disoriented, terrified. My mind cycled through every possibility. Was she attacked? Did she faint? Had she taken something? The nurse at the front desk was kind, but too calm, which scared me even more. "She's stable," she said, guiding me down the corridor. She hit her head in a stairwell. They think she lost her footing. Some bruising, mild concussion. She's resting now. I nodded, numb. As we approached the room, the nurse added, "Her stepmother just stepped out for coffee. You can go in." I stopped. "My what?" "Her stepmother," the nurse said again, not even looking at me. "She signed in under emergency contact." Something in me went cold. I opened the door slowly. Ellie was lying on the bed, eyes closed, a bandage across her temple. Her arms were bruised. An IV dangled from her wrist. I pulled a chair close, trying to breathe, trying not to fall apart. She stirred. "Hey," I whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. "Mom." "Yes, baby." She blinked slowly, trying to focus. Her voice was groggy. I tripped. Or I think I did. "It's fuzzy." "It's okay," I said quickly. "Don't try to talk too much." She looked around. "Did he come?" I froze. "Who?" "Dad." "Of course." I nodded. "Not yet." And as if summoned by her very breath, the door opened behind me. Michael walked in. He didn't look at me. He went straight to her side. "Hey, Peanut," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You scared the hell out of me." She smiled weakly. "You came." "Of course I did." I stood, trying not to shake. Michael looked at me. "You should have called me." "She's my daughter." "She's mine too." I stepped out into the hallway before I said something I couldn't take back. My hands were clenched, my mind spinning. That word, stepmother. Who was she? He must have brought someone new into Ellie's life and told the hospital that she was family, that he had a right to make decisions, that I was secondary. I felt like a ghost in my own story. An hour passed, then two. Eventually, Ellie fell asleep again. The nurse returned and asked to update emergency contact info. I requested access to the paperwork. She frowned but complied. There it was, on the form. Next of kin, secondary. Michael Lane, relationship. Father's spouse, Laura Lane. Spouse. So that was it. He hadn't just crept into Ellie's life. He'd brought someone new. A woman Ellie had never mentioned. A woman who had signed paperwork, answered questions, played caretaker. And Ellie hadn't corrected anyone. I sat in my car for a long time that night, watching the wind push leaves across the parking lot. I couldn't cry. I was too angry. He'd inserted himself into every part of her life, her mind, her history, even her medical records. And I had let it happen. Because I thought the damage was emotional. But this was real, tangible, legal. The next morning, Ellie was discharged. Quiet again. Weak. She didn't speak the entire ride home. When we got inside, I helped her to bed, made her tea. Then I said it. "You didn't tell them I was your mother." She looked up slowly. "What?" "The nurse thought she was your stepmom, because no one corrected her." Ellie looked down. "I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to, or you didn't want to." Silence. "She signed your hospital forms, Ellie." Her voice was small. She was there. And I wasn't. She said nothing. I sat on the edge of her bed. "I have fought for you your whole life. Every cold, every scraped knee, every time you cried over friends, over teachers, over him. And now when you're hurt, I'm just the woman in the waiting room." She started to cry. "I'm sorry," she said. I didn't know what to say. "You say she's my mother." And then I broke. Not loudly, not violently, just a slow collapse of everything I had been holding together for weeks, months, years. Ellie reached for my hand. For the first time in what felt like forever. "I didn't mean to erase you," she whispered. "But you did," I said softly. "And I don't know if I'll ever be whole again." I told myself I would wait. That I'd give her time to heal physically and emotionally before saying the things I had held inside for over a decade. But when your child forgets to call you mother in a hospital, when someone else signs your name in the role you bled to fill, time is no longer a luxury, it's a threat. So I waited until the second evening after her discharge. She was sitting on the back porch, bundled in a blanket, sipping cocoa like she used to do when she was little, only quieter now. The steam curled upward into the twilight as the air turned colder. I joined her without asking. She didn't turn to look, but she didn't ask me to leave either. So I began. Your father didn't just leave Ellie. She stayed still except for the twitch in her jaw. He left in the middle of the night. You were 3 years old. I found his keys on the kitchen counter and his wedding ring in the bathroom sink. Silence. He'd drained the account. Everything. Even the change jar. I couldn't buy groceries the next day. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just spoke. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need decoration, it needs to land plainly like a stone in a still pond. I called him for days. No answer. His number was disconnected within a week. No note. No explanation. Just gone. Ellie slowly turned her head toward me. I continued. 3 weeks later, he called collect from a rehab clinic in Arizona, said he'd made mistakes, said he was sorry. I told him he could come back, but only if he was clean and willing to work for it. He said no. He said it was too hard. She winced. And I believed him. For a while. I told myself that maybe he was doing the right thing by staying away. I pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She didn't resist. But then the clinic called me, told me he'd checked out early, that he wasn't sober, that he'd been seen leaving with another woman, a woman who had visited him more than once. Ellie blinked. I nodded. That woman Laura, the one the hospital called your stepmother. Her lips parted slightly. She was there. Back then. She was there when he walked out. Ellie looked down at her hands. He told me, you pushed him away. I begged him to stay, I whispered. Even when I shouldn't have. Even when he was yelling. Even when he scared me. I hesitated. Then he never hit me. But he got close. Once. Her eyes widened. That's when I filed the restraining order. After he threw a chair across the living room. You were upstairs asleep. I remember the sound of the glass shattering and thinking I can't let her grow up thinking this is normal. Ellie's voice was faint. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I didn't want you to grow up hating him. She looked at me, hurt rising. But now I do. No, I said gently. Now you see him. She wiped at her cheek. I wanted him to be better. I wanted him to make up for everything he missed. I placed a hand over hers. And he made you feel like he could. He made me feel like he wanted to. That's what he does. Her shoulders trembled under the blanket. I thought, maybe if I was good enough he'd stay this time. And there it was, the heartbreak. Not mine, hers. The realization that all those letters, all those calls, all those sweetly packaged half-truths were never about her at all. They were about him, his guilt, his redemption, his need to be seen as someone worthy. Ellie, I said softly, you never had to earn his love. That was his job. And he failed at it. She sobbed quietly now, not hiding it. I'm sorry I let it get this far, I said. I should have told you everything sooner. I wouldn't have listened. Maybe not. But at least you'd have known the truth. She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. He told me you sang to me. He made it sound like a memory you stole from him. I smiled sadly. That was always ours. She nodded. Then leaned into me tentatively, awkwardly, like someone relearning an old language. And I held her. Not the way I used to when she was small and fragile. This was different. She wasn't a child anymore. She was a girl trying to become a woman and realizing the stories she clung to were thinner than paper. We sat there for a long time in the cold under the hum of the porch light, not saying much, just breathing. A mother and daughter, not mended, but not broken either. The next morning she was gone. Her bed was made, phone charger missing, jacket boots and keys gone. I stood in the doorway staring at the vacancy like it was a scream I couldn't hear. At first I told myself she went to the library, or maybe school. But her backpack was still by the door. Her homework untouched. I called her phone. No answer. Straight to voicemail. By hour 2 I was pacing. By hour 4 I was unraveling. I texted her friends. No one had seen her. I called the school. She hadn't shown up. I even called Laura. No response. Finally, I called Michael. He answered on the 3rd ring. Where is she? I said without a greeting. His voice was lazy casual. What are you talking about? She's gone. She left this morning and hasn't come back. I haven't seen her, he said, but maybe she just needed space. She just had a head injury. She doesn't need space, she needs rest. I'm sure she's fine. You're not a doctor. He chuckled low and cold. No, but I know my daughter. No, Michael, you don't. You know how to lose her. And you're doing it again. He hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. My hands were shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the porch light on. Her favorite snacks on the counter. Every room felt louder in her absence, her silence pressing against the walls like fog. By morning, I was ready to call the police. Then the door opened. She stepped in, hair damp, face pale, eyes swollen from crying. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I just stood there. I went to see him, she said, voice brittle. I nodded slowly. She walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood at the sink. Her hands trembled as she drank. I confronted him, she said. I asked about Arizona, rehab, the restraining order. I sat at the table, and I asked. He lied, she said, her voice a whisper. At first. Then he got defensive. Said you were making things up. Said you were unstable. I didn't move. Then she continued, he said. Even if it was true, it was a long time ago. I flinched. He didn't deny the woman, or the money, or the yelling. Just shrugged it off. Like it was a bad dream. Like I was being dramatic for bringing it up. Her voice cracked. I realized something in that moment, she said. He wanted me to believe in him, but he didn't actually care who I was, not really. He cared how I saw him. He wanted forgiveness without accountability. He wanted applause without growth. She turned to face me. Her eyes were red but steady. I told him I needed space. I said nothing. I told him I couldn't see him for a while, that I wasn't ready. I nodded. And what did he say? He laughed, she said, and told me I was just like you. Something inside me stilled. I braced for pain. But Ellie's mouth curled just a little. I told him he was right. The silence between us shifted. No longer sharp. No longer bruising. Just honest. I'm sorry I left without telling you, she said, softer now. I needed to see for myself. I needed to feel it. I understand, I said. I just didn't want to believe he was who you said. I needed him to prove you wrong. And instead, he proved you right. I stood and crossed to her slowly. You don't have to apologize for needing to learn it on your own, I said. I only wish it hadn't hurt so much. She leaned into me, her forehead against my shoulder. I thought he would feel something inside me, she whispered. But he didn't, I finished for her. Because that part of you wasn't empty, it was just waiting. We stood like that for a long time. Later, I found her sitting in the living room flipping through the same photo album. But this time, she wasn't searching. She was remembering. She picked up the camcorder DVD I'd left on the shelf and smiled faintly. I want to digitize these, she said. Preserve them, so one day I can show my kids. That word kids startled me. Not because I hadn't imagined it, but because it meant she was imagining a future again. A future with memory, with roots. Not a fantasy. A life. She stood, walked to me and said, he gave me stories. But you gave me life. My eyes welled. I think I'm ready to smile again, she whispered. He invited us both. I hadn't seen that coming. A dinner. His idea. One final family meal, he said in his message. A chance to put everything on the table. I stared at the text for a long time. Ellie read it over my shoulder and said nothing. We didn't answer for 2 days. Then she surprised me. I want to go, she said one evening as we were folding laundry together. Why, I asked. She shrugged. To finish it. To look him in the eye and not feel small. I studied her. She wasn't naive anymore. There was steel in her, now thin but present. All right, I said. But we go together. He chose a restaurant that tried very hard to be charming, exposed brick Edison bulbs menus on reclaimed wood. He was already there when we arrived, seated at a corner booth, wearing a button-down shirt that tried too hard to look casual. When he saw us, he stood and smiled like we were actors in a play he wrote. Ellie slid in across from him. I took the outer edge closest to the exit. I'm glad you came, he said. Both of you. I didn't respond. He started with small talk. Asked Ellie how school was, talked about traffic, made a joke about ordering too many appetizers. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She just listened. Then somewhere between the salad and the entrees, she said, "You lied to me." His fork paused halfway to his mouth. She continued, "You told me you left because Mom made it impossible to stay, but you didn't say anything about Arizona, or the woman, or the money you stole." He lowered his fork slowly. "I didn't lie," he said. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," she said quietly. He sighed, leaning back. "Ellie, I was in a dark place. I was young. I didn't know how to be a father." "You still don't," she said. I stayed silent. It wasn't my moment. He tried to recover. "Look, I made mistakes, but I reached out because I want to make amends." "You wrote letters," she said, "because it was safe, because you could control what I saw. You never showed up when it counted." "That's not fair," he said, voice hardening. "No," she said. "It's not fair that you think a few diner breakfasts and concert tickets can replace a childhood." He flinched. "I tried Ellie." "No," she said again. "You performed. There's a difference." He looked to me, then expecting me to speak, to step in, to soften her. But I didn't. Because she didn't need protection. She needed to finish. "I wanted so badly for you to be the person I imagined," she said. Her voice was shaking now. "I gave you every benefit of the doubt. I ignored warning signs. I kept secrets from the woman who raised me, who stayed. And you let me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Ellie pushed her plate away. "I'm done pretending," she said. "I came here to tell you that I see through it now. You didn't come back because of me. You came back for you. Because you needed to feel forgiven. And I'm sorry. But I don't owe you that." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, "I never meant to hurt you." She nodded. "But you did. Over and over again." He looked to me again. "You're okay with this? Letting her talk to me like this?" I turned my eyes to his, calm, cold. "She's not talking to you like a child," I said. "She's talking to you like someone who finally sees the truth." He looked smaller then, like a boy in a man's shirt. The server came to ask about dessert. No one answered. We stood. Ellie left her untouched entree behind. As we walked toward the door, he called out, "Will I ever see you again?" Ellie paused, then said without turning around, "Not if I can help it." We left him there, at his little reclaimed wood table, in the life he built out of broken pieces and half-truths. We walked out into the evening. No tears, no dramatic music, just cool air and the sound of our feet on pavement. Ellie took my hand. "I don't hate him," she said. "I know. I just don't want him to have any more of me." I squeezed her hand. "Then he won't." It was small, that smile. Barely a curve of her lips. Not the full kind, the one that used to burst across her face when she was 6 and saw snow for the first time. But it was there, and it was hers. We were sitting on the front porch 2 days after the dinner. She had asked me to join her, no coaxing, no tiptoeing. She brought out 2 mugs of tea, set them down on the weather-worn table, and curled her legs beneath her like she used to. "I thought it would feel different," she said. "What?" "Letting him go." I didn't answer. I just sipped my tea. "It's strange," she continued. "For so long I imagined him coming back. I used to write fake letters from him in my head. I'd picture him walking through the door with flowers saying he was sorry, and that he'd been looking for us all this time." She chuckled softly without humor. "I even used to save a seat for him at my birthday parties in case he showed up." My chest tightened. "You never told me that." "I didn't want to hurt you." "You wouldn't have." She looked at me. "You were enough. You are enough." I didn't realize how much I needed those words until she said them. There was a pause. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees. Somewhere a dog barked. The neighborhood carried on, unaware that something enormous was quietly mending in the silence between us. "I read through some of your journals," she said suddenly. I blinked. "Not recently," she added quickly. "A few years ago. I found one in a drawer. You wrote about working late, about being scared I'd forget you when I got older. About how lonely it was." My throat felt tight. I thought, "You were the strongest person I knew," she said. "But when I read that, I realized you were real. That you were doing all of it scared and still never stopped showing up." I looked at her, but she didn't meet my gaze. She was staring at the sky as if her words were meant for something larger than both of us. "I don't want to forget that," she said. "You won't." We sat there for a while, the late afternoon sun catching on the edges of her hair. She looked older. Not in years, but in presence. In clarity. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive him," she said. "You don't have to. Ever." I shrugged. Forgiveness isn't a requirement, it's a choice. And sometimes it's not the right one. She nodded as if that set something free in her. Then she turned toward me and smiled. It was quiet, not joyful, not triumphant, but honest. And I felt something shift deep in my chest like a bird stretching its wings after a long winter. "I thought I'd never smile again," she said. I smiled back through tears I didn't bother hiding. "You just did." She leaned her head on my shoulder. We sat that way until the sun dipped below the neighbor's roofline, casting long shadows across our yard. Later that evening, she played the piano again. The same song she used to fumble through when she was 13, back when everything was simpler and the world felt small enough to hold. She missed a few notes, paused halfway through, laughed quietly at her own mistake. And in that laugh was everything I had been waiting for. Not a return to who she was, but the beginning of who she was becoming. Some wounds don't close cleanly. They leave jagged scars. They itch when the weather changes. They remind you constantly that something happened even when you pretend it didn't. But scars are proof too. That you lived. That you healed, maybe slowly, maybe unevenly, but healed all the same. It's been 3 months since that dinner. Since Ellie told her father goodbye. And in that time, I've learned something I never expected. Love doesn't always mean being believed. Sometimes it means standing still while the people you love walk straight toward the fire, knowing you can't stop them. Knowing all you can do is be there when they come back. And she did come back. Not the same girl I'd raised, but someone sharper, softer in new places. Someone who didn't flinch from hard truths anymore. We talk more now. Not just about homework or chores or curfews, but about memory, identity, guilt, healing. The kind of conversations that only bloom in soil watered by grief and forgiveness. Some nights she asks me questions about my younger years, about what I felt when I had her, when I lost him, when I faced the world alone. And I tell her, not the filtered version, not the safe mother smiling through it all version, the real one. The version where I cried into towels to muffle the sound. Where I made peanut butter sandwiches for a week straight because that's all I could afford. Where I didn't recognize myself in the mirror for 2 years straight and still put on lipstick because I wanted her to believe everything was okay. She listens. She sees me now, not just as her mother, but as a woman, a person. And somehow that's more intimate than anything we ever had before. Last week she asked if we could paint the living room. Why, I asked. She shrugged. Feels like we're different now. I want the house to feel that way too. So we picked out a new color, a pale sage green, warm calm, the color of a new start. We painted side by side for hours, music playing low, both of us speckled in paint. She made fun of my old dance moves. I reminded her she used to sing made-up Disney songs while brushing her teeth. We laughed. And not once did the past interrupt us. Later that evening, I found a folded piece of paper tucked into my pillow. It was a letter. From Ellie. Short, handwritten. Mom, I don't know what I would have become if you hadn't stayed. Thank you for choosing me over everything else, especially when it would have been easier to walk away. I hope I grow into even half of who you are. Love, Ellie. I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen. Fully. Wholly, with all my flaws, sacrifices, and mistakes intact. People say healing is a straight line. It isn't. It loops. It backtracks. It breaks you open just when you think you've sealed shut. But in that space, in that shattered, shifting place, love grows back. Not the same, not like before, but wiser, tougher, more tender. Ellie doesn't talk about her father much anymore. When she does, her voice is level. No sharp edges, no longing. Just clarity. And when people ask about her family, she doesn't hesitate. She says, "It's just me and my mom. We've been through everything, and we're still here." And that, I think, is the greatest victory of all. Thank you for watching. If you've ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love, or had a child pulled away by lies, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and share your story. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to Grace's Truth for more stories that speak to the heart.